Okay, thanks, Colton. So we'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. We do not have an on-site packet, and we also do not have any additions or revisions to the agenda. No announcements. No. Yeah. So the minutes from the March 25th meeting were in our packets. I can give everyone a few moments to review now if you need, and then when you're ready, entertain a motion. Thank you. Let me move to approve. So we have a motion. Is there a second? Second. Allison. It's been moved and seconded to approve the minutes from our March 25th meeting. All those in favor, any discussion? All those in favor say yes. Anyone opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay, so we will move to the consent item agenda. Iowa statistical report.
That's on page 7. Been busy with IOAs, and I would say that we denied a whole lot, actually. I think we're pretty good coming in.
Single provider approval.
That is on page 8. You can see that we've been kind of busy with single provider. Some of these, like mom and baby ones, those come in every 2 years, so it was like a 2-year cycle that we got that. So they do give those.
And then provider relinquishments.
That's on page 8 also, and there's another one that's been added to that since that was put in the packet, and that's the Heart of America Professional Network. They've relinquished their long-term CNE provider.
Questions? Give a motion for the consent item agenda.
Sure, I can make a motion to approve consent items in the Iowa statistical report, single provider and provider relinquish.
Thank you. The motion, is there a second? Second. Great. Any discussion? Any abstentions? All those in favor say yes. All in favor?
Yes.
Anyone opposed? Anyone opposed? No. Okay, motion passes. Great, unfinished business. Girl.
Yeah, the KAR 60-9-106 revision update, it is in your packet. It starts on page 9. This is actually in CNE committee, and it's also in APRN because some of these changes were requested by both committees. The change on page 9 about offerings presented by national APRN certified boards or those approved by said boards, that actually came out of the APRN committee. They wanted to make sure, since we require certification now, that we would accept the CNEs from the certifying boards and those that they approve. So that's what that is. So they'll see that at the next meeting. What you guys, the changes that you all requested is on page 10. And if you remember, part of the discussion here is board-approved curriculum, like the American Heart Association, ACLS, stuff like that, ENA, MANT, and stuff like that. There's other organizations that offer that other than just the American Heart Association. like Red Cross and stuff. So there was discussion at first about adding the Red Cross to this. And then it was like, you realize that could just keep going and going and going. So that is actually deleted there. However, if you go to the next page, you will see that we have, you know, again, we struck out American Heart Association, all of that. We just have the standardized recertification courses as listed in small c.d. And that's what we just looked at on page 10, all of those listed there. And then the other change that's on page 11 is there was discussion that we didn't have it in here any place that we do not accept BLS. We do not give CNE for BLS. I think we have it on our website, but it wasn't actually in regulation, I guess. So I added that. I think I caught all the changes, hopefully, and so once you guys are ready, just give me direction, you know, to start this through the approval process, if that's what you want to happen, after APRN looks at it too.
Okay, looks good. Yeah, I would agree that that addressed what was without this committee.
That's better wording too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay.
The only question that I have is, and maybe this is just me not quite understanding the language, is if we remove all the language from the first part, where we're saying the APRN part, does that mean that if they certify it for RNs or LPNs or some other body that's not an APRN, that an RN or LPN or another group wouldn't qualify to get it? I understand why APRNs would want it, but if you're not an APRN, does it mean that if it's in that body, certifying it for an APRN, if someone beneath that level couldn't get it? So could the language instead say, if it's a body who certifies it for APRNs, RNs, or LPNs, then it seems like it quantifies any nurse. And thus the CEs could be given to any nurse, not just APRNs. Because if I read that and I'm not an APRN, it reads to me that it doesn't mean anything for me. It doesn't, if I'm not an APRN, then I don't get it.
You can do an IOA. And I mean, it's not automatically given to you, because the way this is written is APRN certifying bodies, or those approved by those bodies, they don't have to do an IOA. We don't question their CNE. They've got what we would consider approved CNE when they get ready to renew their license.
Okay.
Now others, you know, RNs, stuff like that, it's not automatically approved. They would have to do an IOA, you know, unless you guys change the language. I will just tell you, there's a lot of certifying bodies out there for other than APRNs. And I'm just stating that. The APRN certifying bodies, those have been the ones out there, those have been approved by the board. Where like RN certifications and stuff like that are not approved by the board. We started that when we required national certification for APRN starting in 2022. But I mean, if y'all want to change the language changed, whatever.
I just thought that is what we were trying to say when we had mentioned it changing before, that we were trying to make it more brief so that we didn't have all those words in there. And it was something that was concise and brief so that a nurse would know, not just an APRN, but any nurse would know that the language was that as long as one of those bodies, certifying bodies, certified it and accredited it, that any nurse could get it. But the way that this is reading is, and the way you just said it, made me think, well, then only an APRN could get it, not an RN, unless they filled out that IOA.
And I don't think that this one though.
I think you're
correct me if I'm
misunderstanding.
wrong, I don't think that this change request came from this committee.
It
We
did,
not
it came
address
from
APRN.
APRN, yeah, this change that we're talking about right here came from APRN.
Yeah, well, and the only reason that it had been brought up before in this committee was because, remember, I had asked you, like, how could we find out if, and maybe it wasn't during the committee time, and I apologize if it wasn't, but I had asked you, like, how could they find out if, up to date was a certification or not? And you had said, well, so long as this language said, if it was a certification that fell under one of these certifications, if they were certified under ANCC or any of these certifying bodies, then a nurse could get that certification. So when this language stood true, all of our nurses who was certified with any certification under up to date, so long as one of these certifying bodies were certifying it, our nurses could get that certification. But now with this language as it will change, only if they're a nurse practitioner or an APRN could they get that certification. That means for all the nurses who complete certification, and correct me if I'm wrong, but all the nurses who complete the certification now under up to date, for them to get that certification, regardless of who's a certifying body, they will have to complete paperwork, or we will have to complete paperwork in order for that certification to be complete.
Those
Not
of you that
for
are
their
certified.
But I just want to clarify, so we don't have anything to do with their certification, this is just to get continuing ed credit for
Right.
their certification.
But they have to have that in order to renew their license every 2 years. So, and we want to, at Stormont, we give that to them for free. We always tell them, you will never have to pay for those. We will ensure that you get them. So that is something that we offer to our staff free of charge. We always ensure that they get it, which means we will also ensure that they get it. We will go through the steps necessary to give that to them. Even if that means that we have to, on our paid time, ensure that they get it. That's a
But I'm
step
not
that we
sure
do.
when they get their certificate, like, but I'm getting confused, because we're not stopping anyone from being certified. Like this, they can
Right.
obtain their certification through whatever avenue you're providing for certification, right?
But we'd have to
You're
submit the
just saying-
paperwork, right?
The nurse then has to ensure that they get their 30 hours of continuing ed when they go to renew their license. I mean, again, two different, like, am I getting lost?
I think that there's confusion because up there it says, yes, in that offers presented by National APRN. That's C1. But if you go down here under 5, it says an offering utilizing a board approved curriculum, which may include, and it lists a bunch of them, but it doesn't, that's not all encompassing. It could be any board approved curriculum.
Okay, I see what you're saying.
ANCC is board approved.
Okay,
So if it's an
Yeah, because-
ANCC
okay,
course,
Yeah, that's what I'm
it's
like,
board approved.
OCN, like their
Okay.
courses were those are all.
So
they-
it's
they
still
come
a
with continuing
covered
ed,
course,
like
what you're
they're
talking
approved
about.
continuing ed providers.
You see a lot that are ANCC have.
okay. So if they're using up to date and it's
Look at who the.
offering them a certification, they can use that certification without us having to submit it to you, so long as the certificate is given to them through there.
Look at
What
who
we
the
always
providers.
tell people when they call is, okay, if I get a phone call that says, hey, I did my CNE through up to date, is that gonna be approved? Okay, they have a little work to do to find out who all has approved, okay, up to date. And I believe ANCC has, because I think that question's been asked. But it doesn't fall on us automatically to know all of that, because if they go on their website or something, there's typically something that says CNE approval or something like that, and if you click on that, it's gonna tell you like ANCC and stuff like that. So they have to do a little bit of work, but if they got it from somebody who has been ANCC approved, then that would be considered approved CNE. They don't have to do anything through us. If they've got 30 hours, they just check yes on their renewal, and if for some reason they would get audited, they would be able to prove that they have it.
And they know that because it says on C5, it says an offering utilizing a board-approved curriculum. And they just know that ANCC is a board-approved curriculum. Or when we remove some of those organizations above, and then we list that APRN is a certifying body, we don't list out the groups of the organizations. When we're an organization who's doing the footwork for them to ensure that those certifications are legit, it's easy for us in education to say, well, that certificate says this organizing body, and we're in communication with you guys, so we can say, well, ANCC or this organizing body is that. But when this language is removed and doesn't have these bodies on it, and I realize part of the reason is because the bodies would be endless, right? That was one of our goals, was to remove the endless list. But when that list is removed and there's no longer someone who's in that communication of who is this group of bodies, then how do we ensure that we're doing that for those organizations like us who are doing that for our employees? How do we ensure that we're doing that? How do we ensure that those certifications are legit? Do we send them to you every time so that you can ensure that? Do we have some kind of list? Do you have some kind of list that you can provide to those organizations, or do we clarify it in the language? Like that's where I'm most confused, because to be honest, my role soon will be me having to do that. And how am I going to do that? How am I going to know that every individual who shows me a certificate, that is a certifying body? If I have no list and now I have no words on it. I mean, obviously I'm gonna save this and I will have these words, but what about the rest of the words? And what about when it's no longer me? What about when it's the next person and they don't have these words? Like, how's that gonna work? And honestly, those words are really meaningless if we put APRN in front of it, because then it only really applies to APRNs.
That line item does only apply to APRNs.
But before, it never said APRNs. It never
But
specifically,
also now we have removed, so now one says APRNs, and now now it's listing just specific American Association of Critical Care Nurses, American Nurses Association, Emergency Nurse Association. But if you scroll down to 5, which now you have advanced cardiac, now you have the curriculums for advanced cardiac life support, emergency nursing, pediatric trauma, like essentially all of those areas of curriculum without specifically tying it to, and maybe I haven't seen these papers, but when I have gotten continuing ed through any certifying body, it tells me that on my document, what organization has approved the curriculum. I mean, so to me, I think we're opening up, as long as you have documentation that you have this continuing ed through these specific approved providers, which is wide open. It just needs to say that.
Okay. Because I see them submit IOAs, and when you look at the certificate, it's very clear that it was approved by ANCC. And so, and I just tell them that IOA is not necessary. I think we have some of that on our website. I think we do, but anyway.
I don't think it'll be too hard for the ones that are like those clear-cut courses that are in here, that are, especially if they're live courses, any courses that we're currently offering, any courses that we've already submitted. I think there's a whole list of courses here that are listed below within that 5, that C5, that are gonna be, or whatever you were mentioning. I think that they're gonna be very clear. I think when it's the independent study, when we're talking about those online modules where people are obtaining their CEs through those, where we're saying to them, if you go to Up to Date, or if you go to Lippincott, or if you go to these other sources and you're obtaining your CEs through there. I think it's those courses where we may struggle with figuring out what organizing bodies are appropriate. We do have the list above, and if that doesn't apply to nurses, I mean, obviously the ones that say nurse practitioner are nurse practitioners, obviously. But you know, you've listed a few, and I think we can use those few to help guide us. But we want to make sure that we're offering it to, that we have a clear path for the nurses without them having to either them, well, our goal is that they don't directly have to come to you with it, but also that if we do, that we're not burdening you with a bunch of other questions, you know, tenfold throughout the year, that instead we're there, you know. But
If you're talking about Up to Date specifically, it says on their website that they're ANCC accredited.
We see that one a lot.
Yeah, anything that's done on there, because Lippincott says the same thing, because I know a lot of our staff has Lippincott. So I generally just tell my staff if it's ANCC accredited, then you're fine,
Okay,
like per Kansas rules.
okay. That is helpful. I'm glad that you knew that, and that does help us kind of alleviate some of that.
And on the State Board of Nursing site, it says the State Board of Nursing will accept CNE hours from any provider approved by other state boards of nursing, any provider approved by National Nursing Credentialing Association, so those nurses together, or ANCC.
And you'll see a lot of them that are some other board of nursing too. So that's pretty easy to spot.
Touchscreen. That's okay.
I thought that's what I thought.
So that's where it's the way they
Yeah.
are.
If you scroll down.
And I wonder if, what you just said, that is like really clear, like
Really clear. and it's
Like,
okay.
I totally get that. Like, why can't we just have that language in our, like, why can't it just say that?
Because then someone would say, what about advanced cardiac life support? What about-
Right.
I mean, so I think that essentially, I do think that in some ways then boxes us in, like what might change about that? So then
Okay.
this is just giving you general areas of education information, without trying to like provide a list, which, you know, is kind of what was the point of moving away from this initially, I think was initiated by, the specific providers of, ACLS, right?
Red Cross being added.
Yeah, right, when we initially had listed some specific providers. So just trying, in an attempt to be more inclusive, which I'm assuming is then where the APRN thing came in, with their.
Yeah, it was kind of initiated in APRN from the nurse midwives because we did not accept from their certifying body quite like we did from like the nurse practitioners and stuff, because the nurse practitioners were a little bit, there was more certification bodies like for the nurse midwives than one. And they had a very good point, you know, because now we require national certification for an APRN to be licensed. So why wouldn't we accept their CNE? Good point.
I always tend to read more in the language, but I find that knowing more about kind of what's on the website, I tend not to look there as often as maybe I should. So that's really helpful to know kind of how the wording is different and kind of why that wording is different. So thank you guys for helping me to kind of understand that. I think that will help a lot with bringing that back to the organization, helping them kind of understand too, like why that's different and all of that too. So
I always try to direct people there because, I mean,
makes sense.
nobody can answer the question for us. Go to your state board of nursing college. Go to the State Nurse Practice Act. I have a link for code of ethics and, yeah, I just go. Figure it out.
So you mentioned that it needs to go still, so APRN committee will also,
Yeah, they meet after this one,
Right.
and I told them I would bring it back for them to look at also. Because they wanted, the language that's in there is the language they gave me, so I think it's gonna be okay unless they decided something different. But they just wanted me to bring it back and let them look at it before I started through the approval process. So I brought it back to you all to make sure that your part was how you wanted it.
and the next, the delinquent CNE providers.
Yeah, that actually starts on page 13. And these are the ones that did not submit an annual report or a fee for 2024. Because right now we're getting ready for 2025. And the process is that we send out the invoice and, you know, the link and everything to go in and do the annual report, which is statistics. That's what it is. And then pay us a fee, and they probably get at least 2 reminders from us, I would bet. And then I bring it back here, and you guys tell me to do a certified letter. So this is telling you the results of the certified letter. Now, the certified letter gives them 60 days to respond. Okay, so I sent all these certified letters on April 21st. So I gave them until June 22nd. So we've got a few days left. But the certified letters, I know whether somebody has signed for it, so that helps. And so you'll see most of these, either we got the card back with a signature or no signature, but we got the certified letter card back, so we know that it arrived and everything. The ones that are highlighted in yellow, the certified letter was returned to us. No known address, unable to forward. Did follow up with an email on some of these. The email was returned as undeliverable. So I'm not sure really how else to get a hold of these people. But the step after this, if you direct me to, is after June 22nd, for the ones that we have not heard any response from. Then the next step is to do something like a summary letter that our legal counsel puts together for each of these and sends it out to them. And then it gives them, I think it's like 15 days or something after we send this, that they can appeal, because it's basically is given them like 15 days after then, and then we will pull their approval. They will no longer show up as an approved provider, and that's it. They're taken off from the list. And then we start on the ones from 2025. No. So I guess if you want that next step to take place after June 22nd, you just need to let me know, because as you can see, we would lose several. But some of these are some of the new ones that we got within the last few years, and they're supposed to let us know if they want to relinquish their providership, and then we just take them off the list if they say they want to do that, but we haven't heard anything out of these.
So like, for example, on the list, the new birth company, actually I have a friend that worked there, so I knew that they had closed. So then I just Googled them and it said permanently closed.
Okay.
So do we still have to follow like the same steps or?
Follow the same steps, it'll be returned to us.
Yeah.
Oh, the same
Right.
steps.
I just didn't know if there was a different way, if we could determine that they had closed or permanently closed, if there was like a different avenue that was taken or.
I don't believe so. I think we still have to notify them that we are going to pull their providers. They would no longer be approved. Like I said, it's gonna come back as undeliverable, but that way we cover it on. I mean, I could check on that, but
That's why I wondered if any of them had the ones that obviously none of the address, have they? You can
haven't provided any education in the meantime.
And that's just it, you wouldn't know because we get that from that statistical annual report, which they did not fill out, so I don't know.
We don't have to make a motion, we can just direct you, like, I mean, I feel like previously, this time last year, maybe not as many providers, but I feel like that's why the process is in place for a reason, so, you know, to follow the steps, and it does seem like unfortunate time spent when you're aware of, you can go ahead and probably type out what the what the end result will be, but you know, that's, there's a process in place, and so I think that
Agreed.
follow along.
Well, and I can double check with legal counsel to just double check on that, but I think we have to go through the process.
Yeah, yes, would make sense.
Okay.
Yeah.
Then I'll report back in September.
So we will move on to new business. We have long-term provider 5-year renewals. The first is the BE Education Group LLC. That is myself, Melanie, and Allison. Wait a minute. Not my favorite presentation of information. So I did have a question. I couldn't really tell on their advertisements. I feel like I went back and made a note, but did they note that they were an approved provider? I couldn't really tell that for sure. The very, they talk about advertisements.
You mean of the two offerings?
Yeah, like just, well, they didn't note it in their limited kind of text, but, so I didn't see it stated, you know, sometimes they kind of state out their policies clearly. I didn't see it there, and I'm not sure if I saw that, but the other things I noted, like there's things missing on their documentation of attendance, provider information. As well as their certificate, like the signature of the provider, the name and license number. No license number was listed for the participant.
So I still have, contact hours, I didn't see anything on contact hours, how they were figuring it in the partial credit, or anything about instructor credit.
Did mark also no instructor credit, no independent credit. There's
That's
one
what they know.
sentence, there's one sentence about partial credit, but I don't know that it really defined how they provided it. I noted that same. Oh, they just say per KSBN recommendations. That's on page 27.
But you can't verify. That's, I mean, that's the note I wrote on the side of that one.
Yeah, and then it says partial credit is usually not an issue.
Oh, yeah, I do remember reading that. I was like, I remember reading that now.
Leave the cameras on, you can't tell if they're sitting there, they could be out there. but they're
Usually,
sitting there.
right, I usually not an issue.
Yeah.
So, and also there, and you know, it's me, so I'm always gonna harp on this.
Okay.
Their biography is extremely outdated on both accounts. And
Page
they're,
of resources, I did write that down.
yeah,
Yeah.
it's like, what is that, people? And even in your, in fact, I read this on the, up here where the policy's correct, but the offerings don't match because they're outdated. Policy says what it's supposed to. But then when you go back to the resources, they're like 2010, 2009. Like, you know,
Also,
1980, 1978.
Yeah, there were some old.
documentation of attendance, maybe this is what you were just talking about, but I don't recall seeing provider, like any of the provider information, and then the date and title or the presenter information on it. Nor did I ever find a summary of the evaluations or documentation to verify the completion of the offering. Or anything about the record storage system. I could keep going.
Yeah, right, I know, like, record storage, like, there were just some general statements made,
And
like,
this is a renewal,
we will,
isn't it?
it almost like
Yeah.
restore the records.
I know, because I looked at that several times too. I was like, is this an initial?
I think we try to be, flexible and work with sites to get recommendations, but I do think there's a lot that this is just gonna have to be a setback and a resubmission is my thought.
Resubmit with the suggestions that you need to look
Yeah.
at this. And
Yeah,
it's not that the providers, I mean, the education providers don't know this, I mean,
I had a random thought the other day, driving in the car, when I was thinking about this. Under our like titles, and then we have like the bullet points. Is there a thought, like, could we do like an A, B, C, D, E, like a section 1 and then A, B, C, D, E? That way when we're referring to them, we can be like section 1, B, you know, or 2B or 3B, so they know exactly, I don't know if that would help or not, but exactly where we wanted them to go to look at and address.
Yeah, I mean, I can change it. Are you saying like by policies and procedures, that would be a number?
Yeah, so it'd be
And
like,
then like written policies would be like A or something, and then the first bullet would be like a number,
Mhm.
something like that.
so
Is
like,
that what you mean?
yeah, so like,
Okay.
number 1, policies and procedures, and then A, assessing the need for planning, B, fee assessment, C, advertisements.
Okay. Yeah, I can do that.
I just wonder if when we send it back, if that might like add some clarity to what they really need to look at.
And what I do sometimes on these, if they come in like really incomplete, and the first time around, I will highlight in yellow what they're missing, so it's pretty clear when you look at
on
it.
this.
But then when they send it back and it still doesn't have it, it's like, you know, I usually tell them at that point too, I said, you know, this is missing a bunch of information, so you run the chance, if you don't want to send me the information, that this could be denied when it goes to committee as incomplete. And then it's up to them whether they want to. But I see what you're saying. I can certainly do that if you guys want me to.
I mean, in an idealistic world, then we would get one admitted and it would be like 1C, 1D, right?
That would be nice.
I got high hopes.
You might have to do two
We'll see
more
if that
drives
works.
For that to happen, but it's worth thinking for.
Yeah, I can do that.
Do you have enough of that? I mean, I feel like there was almost something in each of the pieces about, I don't know that that is the statement that is required. I don't know that I saw that on advertisements, like the documentation of attendance log, their CE certificate, specifics of record keeping, and then
well, I
if they
found
have
that they
other-
stored electronically.
did they?
Page
Oh, yeah,
29,
they
they-
do say that, yes.
Is that secure enough? I mean,
Well, I mean, if you store it electronic, who has access to it?
yeah, they
I mean,
don't,
that's the
they
whole
don't
key right
specify that,
there.
it just say that they store.
I mean, is it just like everybody here?
Right. Is there,
So maybe extend out the.
yeah, key
the-
to
that
A little bit more
bit.
specific, yeah, okay,
Yeah. Okay,
okay,
so
yep, I can do that.
that's that one. Okay. Case Management Society of America, Kansas City. That is Lori in summer, so we can look to assist you with your summer, but.
Unfortunately, Lori's not here, I'm sorry, I just found
I
out
think
today.
I hadn't had this checklist like printed like this before, but now that I do, no, I really liked it. I found everything. I think it was all fine. I didn't really have any areas of concern. There was a couple of things where like, they specifically had said, so the only areas that I marked differently than what you had marked, Carol, was like where you had said like not applicable. Well, I had marked the same thing, but like my markings were also, they did indicate that they didn't need it. So I went ahead and said, yeah, they did say they didn't need it. So I guess it is technically not applicable, but it was also there.
Like independent study.
They specifically said, yeah, they don't need it. So it is not applicable, but it was also that they specifically said they didn't need it. So, but otherwise, yeah, I thought everything was there. They gave their 2 examples. Everything's in it. Yeah,
Okay,
it was all there.
super.
I didn't see any issues. So, unless I happen to miss anything, I thought it was fine.
Okay.
Back up, can you do a motion for this?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
We move
to
to,
deny that they need to resubmit
Yeah.
or something, we probably need a motion,
yeah,
sorry.
Nope, that's okay. Good thought.
can we just say that, can we just say this and we're gonna deny it, really? Okay, do you mind, can you take a motion?
Oh, yes. I move to deny the long-term provider 5-year renewal application for the education group and return to the provider with comments.
Great, we have a motion and a second, thank you. Any discussion, any abstentions, all those in favor say yes? Yes. Yes. Anyone opposed, no? Motion carries. Thank you, Carol. And so now we will take a motion for case management.
Motion to approve.
Second.
Can I motion?
Yeah.
Can I say, oh, I didn't mark up the same? Yeah, sure.
Sorry.
Okay. I'll fill out the thing.
Thank you. So we have a motion to approve that long-term 5-year regional applicant case management society of America, Kansas City. So we have a second to the motion. Thank you. Any discussion? Any abstentions? All those in favor say yes.
Yes.
Yes. Anyone opposed? No. Motion carries. Thank you. And the next is interim healthcare, which is on page 183 in our packet. This is Melanie. So. I don't have more comments here.
I don't either. The only thing was the formula for credit. I wondered about that. And then on page 212, looking at the other it doesn't really have one for educational offering and the suggested reading list, but it's in the life, so I just put a question mark. It's pretty comprehensive reading list, but there's several classics in there. So I didn't know if that. Question. And then on 229, for the other educational offering, again, there's older, and some of them don't have dates, but we've talked about that before as well too. They don't put access dates for some of the education references. I don't think we ever.
Make comment
Yeah.
review the guidelines or references or something like that. Yeah.
But you said, it doesn't really say how we're supposed to have references, it's just, that's it. They don't put date of access, so should we address it or no? I don't know. That's the big question.
When you say credit application, the hours review on page 198, I don't have note of that. They just noted like partial credit.
Yeah. On actual
25
half
hour.
hour, and so wouldn't we change that to?
This is credit for fractions of hours over 30 minutes to be computed towards a contact hour.
That was it.
So,
So I said we.
comments.
Certificate and roster, did you find one? I don't have that.
So, everyone's roster. So yeah, I don't see a sample certificate. I think they speak to that in their, is that acceptable? In their text portion, but we didn't have any.
Well, actually,
We don't, so actually now that you say that, we don't,
I guess we
not
don't
one of
have
the bullet points in our proposed offerings. So we do ask for that to be spoken to, like in terms of, and typically we receive it, and they talk about their certificate, like they note all the things, but we don't
Yeah,
have an example.
They do it there.
Yeah,
And that was good.
but I think as you're saying that, I did go back to thinking we don't, but it's not, we typically get it, but it's not a bullet point.
Yeah, I mean, I can ask them to send one,
Oh, it's not,
whatever you.
I just noticed that we usually get one.
We do.
Yeah. It's not spelled out. So,
We don't get it usually as part of the offer. Get it just as like,
when
you
they
know, a
talk about it,
template, yes, template for a certificate, a template
For
for
the roster.
the roster, yeah.
But otherwise, I mean, I would accept them
Okay.
or approve them, so.
So maybe I think we've had enough question or discussion that maybe we can approve with a request for certificate template. Or
Just to be
Full
sure that
example.
they're,
yeah,
Yeah,
so that we can visually see
Yeah.
that all the things that they noted in their policy are actually there included. Uh, I think that's what we're asking for. Okay, so can I make a motion?
I move to approve the long-term provider 5-year renewal application with their healthcare with request for certificate template for examples.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
I can send it.
Thank you. Any discussion? Any abstentions? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Any opposed, no. Motion carries. Then we have here Salina Surgical Hospital. This would be Summer and Allison. Starts on page 244.
I didn't have any issues with this. Refreshing.
I think
Okay, awesome.
The examples were short and sweet. Everything was good.
I will make a motion to approve the long-term providership for Salina Surgical Hospital.
We have a motion. Is there a second?
Sure. Now I'm already signing papers, just add to it.
Okay. Any discussion? Any abstentions? All those in favor say yes. Yes. Anyone opposed, no. Motion carries. Okay. Next on our agenda is an initial long-term provider application. No, we didn't have any. The IV therapy subcommittee update.
Yeah, you don't have anything in your packet for this, but the task force did meet on May 1st. It was Laura Mallett, she's from Neosho, Shelley from Garden City, Susan from Seward, Summer, and then Andy and I. And what we decided to do on this first task force meeting was to look at the regulations. I thought that would be a good foundation to start. So we talked about each of the regulations, 60-16-101, 60-16-102, there's some definitions that we need to add, and there's some clarification that we need to do. And so I haven't had time to work on this, but I will, and bring that back. But I thought it was very good discussion. That was really good discussion. And then just a lot of it, I think, makes sense to us, but if you really look at it to get clarification, it's true. That's probably not very clear. So we just have to clarify some of these, what's all included, you know, under supervision, different stuff like that. And then, let me see, I'm gonna read down through this. Just different delineations of what they should do, what they shouldn't do, and different stuff. I have it all down here, but anyway, that's kind of good. Just, I think we need to do some work on that, definitely, so I will work on those. And then we got into the discussion, there was agreement that the test needs to be looked at and changed. And then also, do we require them to follow our tests? Do we have like just a test pool? How's this? And same thing with competency, because we've got this really long competency checklist. And is that really necessary, or could that be cut down and make it much more manageable? So the recommendation that came out of that is to assemble a task force of standalone and PN curriculum providers of ID certification that would be standalone, and also some of those that have it in their PN curriculum, to develop a test and a competency checklist. So we just kind of wanted permission, because that probably would be a different task force than this. It could come out of this, but like out of these, 3 of these were nursing programs, and then summer is a standalone. So we probably need to get a little bit different representation there, you know, so that we have more of each, and then let them work on the test. And and the competency checklist, I can start down through these regulations and start working on these, do some clarification and stuff like that. Did I get it, Summer?
And so with the regulation review, is the plan that you will take that back to that subcommittee?
Yeah, I'll do some work on it and then send it out. I don't know if we have to meet or what, send it out to them so that they have a chance to reply. We can do some work. I'll try in September to bring a draft back of those. Some of it's gonna take a little bit of work, but
Yeah.
anyway.
So do you think that that step needs to be, does that step inform then the next task force in terms of certification and like the test and competency, or is it appropriate to sort of have 2 different pathways to?
I would say 2 different ones. I think they could definitely do a lot of work on the competency, because I don't think, some of this might maybe change the competency a little bit. A lot of this is clarification, truly. And the test, I think they could do some work on the test, you know, what they want that to look like and different stuff like that. But definitely some of the tests will be determined by these regulations, sure.
So you just need this committee to then essentially say, you know, yes, good idea, move forward with the task force or ID test and competency.
And then I could find good representation, find out from the 2 groups, the ones that do it in their PN program and then the standalone, who wants to get together and work on the competency and the test.
Questions or concerns?
Got it?
Okay.
So then for our agenda items for September, in addition to our standing provider review, will be, I feel like the 60-6-106 doesn't need to come back. It's just moving on after APRN, so we're good with that.
I can report back where it's at in the approval process, if you want me to.
Great. And then we would be able to probably wrap up the process of the status of both delinquent smoking providers. An update on the regulations review from that subcommittee, and then maybe just an update on the status of, you know, task force, like we able to get participants and plan. Anything else?
one announcement before we adjourn. Are we ready for that?
From my perspective, yes.
Okay,
We are.
all right. This is basically for your committee members that are not board members. We are at the end of the fiscal year. We have just a few days left for Jill to get all of the travel stuff in. So what that means is today, if this is the only committee you're on, before you walk out that door, you need to turn in your travel sheets, period. If you're on another committee, then you can wait till you're on the other committee. But literally, please do not go home with this or something, because she's got like 2 or 3 days to turn this around and still get it in this fiscal year. So that's why we really need you to turn it in today before you leave, please. The board members will know about it tomorrow. You guys will get it tomorrow. But if you have questions on that or anything, let me know, but please.
Great. And on that note, we can adjourn.
See you in a bit. Cool.